Okay, so today for session 3, we're here with Kingi Snauga for a kōrero on navigating Kawanatanga while imagining Tino Rangatiratanga. Kingi works across Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā, bringing insights from the justice system, tikanga and governance. The session is about how we embed tikanga into decision-making, balance the pressures of Kawanatanga with the aspirations of Tino Rangatiratanga, and imagine systems that reflect who we are as Māori leaders and business owners. Just an FYI for everyone joining us today, we're going to hold on to our pātai and our Q&As for the end of the session, just so not as to distract our speaker. So please drop your questions in the chat as we go, and we will circle back to them. I'm going to pass the mic over to Kingi now. So nō reira ka tuku atu kia Kingi Snauga. Kia ora, Kingi.
Kia ora roi mata, o te rā tēnā tātou katoa. E tika, me mehi tonu ana ki te honga mate. A rātou mā, ko te ariki nui o tūwhare tōku tumu, me me he tikana me mihi kia rātou e noho ana. I raro i te kāpua pauri, o te rakia. Ko ki wairua mai kia tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Yeah, I'll get straight into it. Thank you, Roima. Okay, so going to talk a little bit about this very complex topic, I think, about navigating Kawanatanga while imagining Tino Rangatiratanga. So within the 40 or so minutes that I'll share, hopefully we can I can provide some insight into this kaupapa, but acknowledging that this is a massive take, and basically this is some of my personal reflections and experiences. Just want to acknowledge what this kaupapa is for me. About it really reflects firstly my whakapapa, and I want to talk about that I am a uri from Pehe Aori Marae, Ngāti Hau, Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu, and wanted to start by acknowledging that whakapapa, to acknowledge the person who's pictured here, my uncle Les Wakefield, who was passed over, but was the former chair of our marae at Pehe Aori, and to me was a innovator, a man of service, a builder, a person of deep humility, that spent his early years in the armed forces and then transitioned to a place of service within our hapori and our communities. And I guess my dream for Pākehā, and part of my aspirations is that, I want to see us as a collective that are providing the support for those people like my uncle and the many, I'm sure you uncles and aunties that are doing the hard mahi just to keep the lights on in our wharenui and keep our marae operating. So that's kind of one of the main motivators. It's where my I will be buried at that marae, and where my children's whenua is buried as well.
Aroha mai, Kingi. Can you put your slides on display from beginning? Your slides are small for the participants. It's on. Sorry,
you can't see the slides?
No, we can see the PowerPoint page, but we can't see the slide that you're referring to.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so present mode, I think.
Oh, see, this is beyond me now.
Go all the way left and try that one from beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see that now?
It's not loaded yet.
Not loaded.
I can't. 1, 2, 3. There should be a little play button at the top.
A little play button. So can you just see the screen that I'm sharing at the moment?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I can see.
What I'll do, is that better? Can you see the slides in any event there?
Yeah, they are clearer now and bigger.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not obviously not a tech expert.
You're
I might try see if I can just share I don't know how to do that. Something. Sure. And one other trick, and then if it doesn't work, I'll go back to doing this.
Yeah, on the bottom right of your screen, there should be a present button.
Right. Okay. How's that? Is that better?
Beautiful.
Okay, here we go.
Kia ora.
All right. So I just want to talk a little bit about my background. So I'm kind of born whāngarei, but I spent majority of my life living in Auckland, and went to law school in Auckland and studied a law degree and a Bachelor of Arts with my studies and political studies. Worked as a prosecutor at the Crown at Meredith Connell in Auckland, and then went overseas and did a Masters of Law at Harvard Law School as a Fulbright scholar, and spent some time at Standing Rock, which was an issue that many of you might remember about 10 years ago, a pipeline that was being built through the North Dakota region. And I was fortunate enough to be there as a kind of human rights observer and to provide some tautoko in that human rights space. And then since then, I've been back in Auckland, although I'm moving north to Whangarei at the end of this year as a lawyer in the youth court, so represent young people charged with crimes in the youth court, a lot of ram raids, a lot of really complex backgrounds, as you can imagine. And I think what I wanted to reflect on was that my life and my journey to this point has been navigating the tensions that many of us hold within Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā, within, as I've noted there, the justice system and tikanga Māori. For me, I was a student of kohanga reo in full immersion, and then at 12 years old, I went to King's College as a boarder. So I've kind of, my life, I think, is a metaphor for holding space within the two often conflicting worldviews that we all navigate in Aotearoa. This person here, who I'm pictured with, is Avo Looking Horse. He's the 19th generation keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe. He's a tohunga for the Lakota people and a visionary leader, and someone who I was fortunate to spend a bit of time with, who talked about how he wanted to bring more traditional healing and traditional knowledge within their health system. So acknowledging also that we have this tension domestically, but we all know that for many of our iwi taketake, it's the same issue, that we're all kind of navigating this journey between, and this will be in the show, I'll talk about more, between Kawanatanga and Tino Rangatiratanga within Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā systems. Not to be too legalistic, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how I think about this issue. So Justice Williams is one of our, is the only Māori judge on the Supreme Court, and is a really great kai kōrero if you ever have a bit of time to jump on YouTube and listen to some of his kōrero. He wrote this article where he describes what's happening in Aotearoa as the Lex Aotearoa, essentially as the blending together of the legal traditions of Kupe, the navigator who came to Aotearoa and brought with him our customary systems of laws, and Captain Cook, who of course brought the British systems of laws. And they're quite different, distinct systems that can be chalk and cheese in many places. But in the metaphor I've used, which is poignant, I think, for the Whāriki network, is we're kind of at a stage of trying to weave a Whāriki together that weaves together Kupe's law and Cook's law to create this Lex Aotearoa. And as we know, I'm not a weaver, but any weavers that are listening will know that if things aren't woven well, or with the mana of each source given appropriate mana, that it just won't hold what it's supposed to hold. So I guess another example that I often think about is in property. The kind of traditional Western view of property is John Locke, and he talks about how property is what I put my energy into, and it's something that I own and for the benefit of myself, whereas for us, some of our traditional thinking is very different to that, and about kaitiakitanga. So we kind of, within the law space, there is this change happening of incorporating more of our culture within that space, and what does that mean for us, and is there dangers involved? And I think there are some risks, and I'll talk about those too in a little bit more detail. This is more kind of reflecting the tension that I've been I'm talking about, is the tension that I think exists between kind of remembering our role within the universe. And this is a quote from Reverend Māori Marsden, who talks about us as not the centre, but really that we are, as tangata, the pōtiki within the wider universe. Not to be too deep over your lunchtime session, but that remembrance of our role as the Pōtiki and our connection to Taiao, to other beings that inhabit our space is really important, I think, to maintaining not only our wellness, but the wellness of the world. And that's quite a difficult space to navigate at the moment when we think about what's happening around the world, especially when things like spirituality are being weaponized in places like Israel, and even in the United States recently, we've seen the weaponization of spirituality and identity to serve the interests of some to the detriment of others. So I don't think from my whakaaro that kind of the journey is about elevating kind of us, is more about kind of remembering our role within the wider noosphere. So pretty deep kōrero, but I wanted to kind of start there as I think an important kind of tension that I think exists on a global scale that is under the microscope, so to speak, for us, because we're navigating this tension as well. So a case that some of you might be aware of was a case that I was involved in the Supreme Court, which found that a non-Māori had mana, and that case caused a lot of controversy, and rightly so, within our communities about the use of tikanga Māori to help overturn convictions for Peter Ellis. One of the comments I just wanted to make about that case is that even the courts are acknowledging that we must not overstep our role and start to impair the operation of tikanga Māori as a system of laws and customs in its own right. And we know kind of for us that the history of courts as a tool of colonisation is well known. Looking back to the native courts, looking to the role that courts played in the removal of tamariki Māori. So kind of navigating again that tension between giving our culture to a Kawanatanga space, which is the justice system, but ensuring that the mana and tapu of that system remains intact. So another kind of issue that I often talk about is the tokenistic acknowledgement of culture within the justice system is a real issue that I think needs to be guarded against. And an example that I use, or an analogy that I like to use, is we don't want our culture to become a korowai on the wall of the court. We want our culture to be embedded within the court itself, in the processes, within the walls, within every part of it, rather than to be there just for ceremonial purposes. In the same way that we don't want our culture to be used to do a mihi to one of our whanaunga who then goes to Ngāwhā to serve 10 years in the prison system. So it's not only guarding, I think, against kind of the tokenistic or misuse of culture within courts, but this is a wider issue within all our spaces that we must navigate, is when do we use our culture and how do we use it safely in a way that protects the whakapapa of our culture, but also our own, keeps ourselves safe. Matike Mai might be something that some of you are aware of. It's a report that was produced a few years ago now, after Dr. Moana Jackson and Professor Margaret Mutu were asked to by the Iwi Leaders Forum to come up with a report that did a deep dive into the future of Aotearoa and what our constitutional framework might look like. And this was a chance to speak to, I think, over 100 different hui across the motu, speak with thousands of different people, to really make sure that their voice was heard around what does the future hold for us here in Aotearoa, in terms of our legal structure, in terms of our constitutional structure. And Matike Mai is, for me, a really helpful resource, not only in the big picture thinking, but it's a helpful reminder that I use when I try to reflect, well, what space am I working in this moment? Am I in a Kawanatanga space, or am I in a Tino Rangatiratanga space, or a relational space? So as a lawyer, I work within the Kawanatanga space. I work in the justice system, which comes off that. But there are many organisations within the community that have their Tino Rangatiratanga, their autonomy, that might engage with providing support for those, for example, that are in the community serving sentences, say through rongo programs, through counselling, te me. So there's that relational aspect of it that occurs. But for me, it helps me when I stop and think, what pōtai have I got on today? Is it a Kawanatanga pōtai or a Tino Rangatiratanga pōtai? To help me reflect on, what is the mahi that I'm doing and how is it contributing to kind of my broad aspiration of more Tino Rangatiratanga. So Mātiki Mai, it's quite a lengthy report. If people had time to read it, I definitely would encourage you to have a look at it. It's a really poignant report, I think, as we get closer to 2040 and 200 years of the anniversary of Te Tiriti, and what does Te Tiriti or Waitangi look like within our legal system. For me as a lawyer, the text of the treaty is a really important taonga, and that's what I think the future holds for our courts, is more pressure to have greater recognition of the text of Te Tiriti, the Māori version, rather than principles. Principles often can be easy to interpret in a way that's maybe not as favourable for us, but the text, I think, is quite clear around that division I've talked about Tino Rangatiratanga, self-determination, autonomy, and Kawanatanga being kind of the crown governance. And this is the model. I know it's it looks a bit much there, but if you look at the one on the left, that's probably where we might be at the moment. The Kawanatanga sphere is very significant, and the Tino Rangatiratanga sphere is very small. But the vision, I think, is where we get to a point where there is true partnership, there is true Tino Rangatiratanga across all areas. I think the justice system is a really important area where, my experience working with 90% Māori, it's an area that needs a lot of help, that there's a lot of healing that needs to occur. There's a lot of care that needs to be taken to help reconnect those people in their whānau back to who they are. So it's an opportunity, I think, to think beyond the constructs of justice being arrest, processing through the court, corrections, more of a space of healing, and what that looks like is up to us, I guess, to decide if, in terms of the Tino Rangatiratanga. So we could create, more Tino Rangatiratanga within kind of one aspect of the justice system, but if we are, in my mind, going to create transformative change, it needs to be throughout. So, like I said, the policing through to courts, through to corrections, and even oranga tamariki, there needs to be that consistency across all aspects. How do you increase more Tino Rangatiratanga? I don't have the answer, but I think it's about creating more space or carving out more space. And that really comes down to the Kawanatanga acknowledging that, but also allowing us to step forward to take over aspects of care of tamariki, justice aspects that really empower us in a way that is Tino Rangatiratanga. Being overseas, one thing that I noticed a lot too from some of the First Nations that I worked with and worked for in kind of Pine Ridge and across the First Nations there, was the way that they talked about the federal contracts that they entered into is really constricting their Tino Rangatiratanga, so that through contractual arrangements, that although there was pute coming in that was beneficial, it did create more binds and constraints on the way that they could exercise their self-determination. And I was interested when I met some nations that didn't have accept any federal money at all, and was amazed at how they were able to operate even their traditional dispute resolution system still to this day in the way that they have for 10,000 years, without any government support. and that's a massive undertaking. I think of my uncle Les, for example. He did a lot to just keep the marae open on the smell of an oily rag, like a lot of us do. And kind of, that was just something I just wanted to share with you. That tension between maybe more putia is helpful and I think necessary to ensure that the mahi can be done, but to be mindful of the way that we might enter into contracts that create more restrictions on us. Some questions that I think about that might be beneficial, and I guess I'm speaking to all the converted, to be honest. I'm speaking to a Māori business network, so aroha mai, this is stuff that's you're already well embedded in your practice, but just wanted to share some of the things that I try to do in my mahi. Is what are the ways that I reflect tikanga in my day-to-day work? I think the first way that I do it is with my clients. I acknowledge their mana and tapu. I acknowledge their whakapapa. Many of them whakapapa to the north as well. And I also acknowledge the whakapapa of harm that they carry with them when I work with them. Harm in terms of intergenerational trauma, in terms of addiction, in terms of violence, in terms of regulating emotions. So that's kind of the first thing that I try to do, is just to acknowledge that whakapapa of harm, but also acknowledge that the divine lives within them, that our whakapapa lives within them as well. So it serves them, I think, when I am more consciously aware of who they are and let them be seen, because a lot of times in the justice system, our people and clients are not seen. They are silenced in the court process. So that's a really important part of my job that I take seriously, is to just ensure that I see them and that I try my best to let their voice be heard. What are the ways that I can best serve the interests of my client now and in the future? That's a really important point. One thing that I've been noticing a lot too recently is a lot more organisations that are not Māori that are very keen to put on the website their commitment to Māori values, but that those values are not being reflected in the processes and practices that they're actually doing on a day-to-day. And I know there's no, there is no magic rule or system that this is the only way that things must be done. But I guess, as a lawyer, I'm kind of keen to ensure there is some accountability too. So within my space, I try to do that, to hold organisations or the Kawanatanga to account, if it's committed to, say, Oranga Tamariki, for example, that's reflected in the way that they do their mahi. And probably the same for you too, that if you are working with government and non-government organisations that have this reflect the values of aroha pono te me within their websites or their constitution, that there needs to be some accountability. So that's a way I think lawyers can be helpful, not to give myself a plug, but that if you ever get into a position where there is a dispute that's becoming more of a area of the courts, are also interested in holding accountability. Lessons from the Kawanatanga sphere. I mean, this could be a whole PhD, I reckon. The first lesson that I have learned is recently just having more awareness of the different hats that I wear at any one moment. So like I use that example of the client who's from up north. In the same hui, I will wear the hat of his relation and then simultaneously put on the hat of his lawyer, and then put on the hat of a protective role against the power of the Kawanatanga in that moment. So I think that's the first thing that I've learned recently, is about having more awareness of the different pōtai that we all wear within the mahi that we all do, as a way to for me to keep myself safe as well when I'm working in those areas, and it's really intense and can be quite heavy kaupapa. Having an awareness helps to keep me safe. And acknowledgement that a lot of these systems and structures weren't built for us. They weren't built to reflect our values. the court system, as I said, has a whakapapa of land taking, of being a key part of the colonial project. So recognising that we can keep giving our culture and keep giving our tikanga to these spaces, but I go back to Mātike Mai and the need to carve out more space for us to be us in a way that isn't constrained in those manners. And there are examples, like I said, about the First Nations being constricted by contract. There are other examples where First Nations have carved out a lot of autonomy, and a bit different to us because they have a lot of whenua that's, through reservations quite separate. Sorry, I can hear the bell of the train going past, so sorry, there's a train in the background. But bear with me. It's not a talking to wrap up yet. I've still got about 20 minutes. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the self-care things that I do as someone who works in the Kawanatanga sphere and works within the heaviness of the system. Things that I like to do to recharge is to go to the taiao, to go to the forests, to go to the moana, to do things like meditate. It's something I've only within the last year have started to do, and to be kind of more conscious of the different parts of calling back the different parts of me after I've been in those different areas, say in the Kawanatanga space, Te Mea. Here's the train. I've talked a little bit about the tikanga-based decisions within governance, and that's a kind of an important thing. The only thing I would say about that is that there is clarity if we are using tikanga within those spaces around the kawa and tikanga that's been engaged in governance spaces, and that it's not ceremonial, it's meaningful. Like I said, it's sometimes within what I'm seeing more is within the legal spaces, that ceremonial kind of acknowledgement of our culture, but that it's not embedded and woven within all aspects of procedure. So as we're not just there to do karakia, we're there to meaningfully participate and make contributions because it's really needed in my whakaaro. Negotiation manakitanga with firmness, I think that's more of a for me, I in my space, in the legal space, I try to always draw back to the whakapapa of harm that exists for a lot of the tamariki I represent. So to remind the police and to remind oranga tamariki of the intergenerational nature of this young person who we're dealing with today, and to provide manaki through reconnection, through just acknowledging that. Leadership, I've mentioned that a little bit, the walking within two worlds. It's not an easy thing, I think. I at the same time as I work as a youth advocate in the court system, I'm also sitting on a Crown board, and that's a job that I take really seriously because you are in some ways the voice for Māori within that space, and it comes with its benefits and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is some ways that you do feel a little bit more suppressed in what you can share and say because of the rules around being on a Crown board. So I know that there are people here that will understand that, but I think of it as, for me, as a chance to learn, a chance to learn from other governance organisations, and hopefully a chance to give back in the future in the hapu and the iwi space. I've kind of mentioned already the First Nations experiences. Yeah, I think that's really, really important as we kind of continue to see more and more post-settlement iwi, more and more iwi that are entering into social service contracts, that are entering into arrangements where they are taking over aspects of important aspects of governance, like care of children, that those don't become so restrictive as to undermine our own Tino Rangatiratanga. So that's a careful balance in somewhere. Something that I think lawyers are really important to assist with. An awareness as well of the spaces we all work in, the many hats that we all wear simultaneously as well, and the pressure that we feel, and to acknowledge that's okay. For my life, I certainly have felt a lot of pressure and expectation at times that I wasn't really acknowledging, that I would put out of sight or out of mind. But I think that now, within the last year, I've tried to be more mindful and conscious of pressure, of expectation, of the different areas that like I said, that I walk in, and that it's also not about me, but about our future generations. And that's something I really liked about the Lakota people, was their kōrero about making decisions now for the next 7 generations of tamariki to come. And that's kind of a model that I'm trying to work on, is less about seeing the pressure and expectations, but more seeing it as a opportunity to contribute. Kind of just wrapping up, finishing a bit early, but that's probably, someone will mind that. What are some of the practical tips? I think I've talked about the kind of the embedding tikanga within operations rather than in a lip service way is really important. And I'm sure that also means our expectations of those that we work with to do the same. If that's within your area that you work in, that it's not just about acknowledging concepts on your website or on paper. It's about how you interpret and reflect that in all your procedures and policies. And one way that I've noticed, obviously, for all of us, is investing in people, investing in our own that have the skills and the ability to embed those tikanga practices and koa within our organisations. And that means also that there are times where we do work within the Kawanatanga sphere, right? And we do learn and gain insight into things like whether it's justice or any area that then can be an insight and a tool that can assist with the future mahi. So there is an investment aspect that comes with kind of internally, but also the investment that we get when we do spend time in those Kawanatanga spaces. That's kind of what I've thought about from what I've been up to. Balancing economic goals with aspirations for Tino Rangatiratanga. That's a massive question. I shouldn't have put that in there. It's like the balance between economic growth for us, for our communities, for our people, and the big picture. How do we turn that economic growth into kind of system change, into system transformation? And for me, that's the next 50 years, is that mahi, and that comes down to the Mātiki Mai model in my mind. That's a good visual model for how we are looking to increase our Tino Rangatiratanga, increase our influence within all different areas, and decreasing the Kawanatanga's influence over us. And that's a difficult thing. I think we can be our own worst critics as well. So I think it's about bringing aroha to those that are in those leadership positions, because it's very difficult to manage that. But that we are looking 7 generations ahead, and conscious of our role as Pōtiki. That's something I think about a lot too. How are we protecting the other, the environment, etc., and the way that we're making our decisions. So yeah, that's really it from me. That's kind of my journey. I'm very happy to answer any questions at all. But I think that my life and my work experience has been about navigating those tensions within the two systems, within my own personal life, and my upbringing and my journey to date. But that we are at a moment that I think is an exciting moment where, although there is a lot of conflict around the world, here in Aotearoa as a pōtiki within the nations of the world, one of the newer nations, we have the ability and the space to do something really different and exciting. And I know I'm speaking to Pākehī, but the Māori economy is not going anywhere. It's going to continue to grow exponentially, and that is, of course, going to create more influence and more ability to leverage change, regardless of what the Kawanatanga are doing, regardless of their views on whether tikanga is law or anything, to be frank. It's the growing influence of us and our communities will, because we're not going anywhere, is going to create change. And 1 in 3 of us are we are 1 in 3 under 25 as well. So yeah, we're good at nation building, which is an exciting thing for when I think of our tamariki yet to come. What did I wish I knew when I started out? I think I wish that I had more awareness of the different pōtai that I was wearing at the different times of my life. I think as a young person, and I'm 38 now, I was very ambitious and very driven, which was a good thing, but I wasn't kind of probably as aware as I am now of the different demands that can be placed on you and the toll that can take. So that's why I've talked about calling back, the importance of calling back your mana and mauri back within you when you are so sought after. I'm talking about me of you and being pulled into different areas that can have a drain on your energy and your wellness. So that's the thing that I wish that I had done more of when I first started out as a prosecutor, working in an area where I was prosecuting mostly Māori, was the importance of self-care. For me, Whāriki6 is a big part of who I am, and recognising that sensitivity that I have to spirit, to mauri, within my day-to-day mahi, so that when I get to the end of a big day, that I need to do those self-care things to ground, to keep myself well, and to be connected to our community. So that's why I've really am grateful to speak with you today as a whāriki of Māori that are doing this mahi in all different areas. So yeah, really great to share with you all. And yeah, I hope there's been something in here that's been of benefit to you. I know I've rushed through it, so I'm very happy to take any questions. But that's what I'd want to end with, is the importance of calling back those different parts of you that you might spread out around your different kaupapa.